Hello and welcome to our latest Cambly live session. To those of you who don't know, my name is Daryl and I'm going to be your tutor today. So thank you for joining me. I see there are a few people already in the chat. So message, tell us your name, tell us where you're from. We've got already Koos from Durban in South Africa. We've got Desi saying hello. We've got Ewan Bin says hello to hi to Daryl. We've got someone from with a little unicorn. We've got Luann says hello from Brazil. Kalipan says hi sir from Sri Lanka. Thank you to the people that are coming again and again. Thank you for joining us for our latest Cambly session. And remember, if you have missed any of the other sessions, there's the playlist. It's got all the videos. You can go watch all of our Cambly live sessions, or you can watch all of the other static videos that are not live. So go check it out. To those of you that don't know what Cambly is, I will explain a little bit at the end. For now, just know that it is a great web and mobile-based application where you can learn English with tutors just like me. Ooh, I see some more messages coming through. All right, we've got from South Korea. We've got Rashika from Sri Lanka. All right, thank you for joining us here today. Today, we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're doing the difference between some British and American words. So sometimes you'll hear this if you watch a lot of American movies and a lot of British movies, or American series and British series, that there are words they use for the same thing, but they have two different meanings. And that can be confusing. So today we're going to go through a lot. I've got these, I've got some more as well. We're going to see how many we can get through. I see some more things are coming through here. So Kilipan says that Cambly is one of the best platforms to improve your English skills, and I have to agree. Remember, with Cambly, you can find tutors in whatever you need, and there are always tutors ready to take your call and talk to you. And we've got Heidi from Romania. We've got Everyday Flicks from Pakistan. We've got Maria. She's saying hello. Heidi, thank you for the well wishes and good health to everybody that is here today. And Maria is from Brazil. All right, great. Now, remember that today is a interactive lesson. So as we go through the words, what I want you to do is to send a sentence. And I'd like you to send a sentence using the American and then a sentence using the British word, so that we can see that they're basically the exact same word, just a different usage. And you might be asking, why? Why do we have these different usages? And before we dive in, just to make sure that everybody is here in the chat already, let's just explain where these different kinds of words come from. Remember that languages, they spread out in a way. They all develop in their own way. So even though we're talking about English, which is, let's call it the father or mother language, as these languages develop in their own countries, they go in different ways. So when there was the split and America, as we know it, was kind of created and then declared its independence, it developed its own kind of language and its own words for things. And back in the United Kingdom or England or Great Britain, whatever you want to call it, it developed its own word for things. So they may be the same things, but the languages went in their own way. It's the same reason why we have different accents, why we have English, but you can have an Australian English accent, an American English accent, a British English accent, a Scottish English accent, an English accent from everywhere. Because again, the languages develop in their own ways, the accents develop in their own ways. And I think that actually makes it more fun that we have so many different ways that we could express ourselves and enjoy understanding other people's English, even though we all speak English. All right. And we've got a few more people that have joined us. And we've got Gloria from the US. And someone has said, I'm the best teacher. Thank you very much for that. We've got Oakpea is from Togo. Oh, that's I've never had someone from Togo before. That's great. And Kalipan says, apart from the word differences, the pronunciation always gets him. And this is true, right? Pronunciation accents change in different, like we said, different types of English. All right, so let's get started. Let's have some fun. What I'm going to do as we go through it is I'm going to explain it. I'm going to draw a little picture to kind of explain the word, and then I'm going to use it in a sentence. I want you guys to start sending sentences, and then I will type it into the chat so you have both versions of the same word. All right, and we're going to start with something simple and fun, which is biscuits versus cookies. So obviously what we're talking about here is food. So I'm going to draw a little biscuit or a little cookie there, and someone is eating it. Let's put it into someone's hand. Okay, we got the guy, and he's eating the cookie or the biscuit, and he apparently has 3 eyes for some reason. So which one is the UK? Which one is the US? So cookies is the American pronunciation or the American word, and biscuits is the British or UK word. And it's the same thing. And we're not talking about one specific kind of cookie or biscuit. Chocolate chip cookies, chocolate chip biscuits, oatmeal biscuits, oatmeal cookies. Any kind of biscuit or cookie, that's what we're talking about here. And I wanted to start that way because, well, we all like biscuits and cookies, right? All right, so, and we even got Samar, who is here, says hi from Palestine. Wow, never had that before. All right, so I'm going to write it down into the chat. I want you guys to send a sentence using the word biscuit, using the word cookie. And remember, it's not just plurals, singular as well. Tell me what your favorite biscuit or your favorite cookie is. So we've got biscuits and cookies. And what is it? It is obviously a sweet baked flatbread in a way. And so I'm going to use it in a sentence. I'm going to say my favorite type of cookie or my favorite type of biscuit is chocolate chip. Whose isn't? All right, so send me yours. Tell me what it is. So that is biscuits and cookies. Then we're going to move on to one that sounds a bit strange if you've never come across this before. And we've got the word umbrella, which I think we all understand what an umbrella is. All right, so it's raining, and someone's going to hold the umbrella to stop getting wet. And so that is the United States word. But in the UK, what they will sometimes do is kind of shorten this and make it sound a little fun. And they're going to use the word brolly. All right, so this is the UK. And if we look at this word, if we look at the word umbrella, we can see where brolly is coming from. So the brel in umbrella is being used there. We could maybe call it a brelly, but people don't do that. Somehow it developed to become brolly. And so we've taken the word umbrella, they've changed it, made it fun. And so we can say it in the same way. So if we were using the American word, we'd say, well, oh, it's raining outside, I better take my umbrella. If we were in the UK, and I'm not gonna try to do a British accent, I don't think it will go well, but they would say, oh, it's raining outside, I better take my brolly. Same thing, exact same thing, it's still the umbrella. Oh, I see we've got some examples coming through. So Kalipan says, my favorite type of cookie is Oreo. Oreo is great, chocolate, cream. And Sammer says, Keks is my favorite cookies. I don't know Keks, so maybe tell us what is Keks? Sammer, what is the flavor there? And Divi says, my favorite cookie or biscuit brand is bourbon cookies. I think those are the long, thin ones, which I also really like. And Ian Bin says, I love baked biscuits. Good sentence. And Oakby says, I love Trackers. And Calipan says, especially the Oreo from the USA, which is delicious. All right, Oreo is great. Even I think this Oreo ice cream, this Oreo covered with chocolate. But we're not going to discuss all that now. And Sammer says, Keks is a famous brand in Sweden. All right, I'm going to make a note of that, and I'm going to look that up later. All right, and Divi says that the bourbon cookies are rectangular shaped. Okay, I'm going to take a look later. I'm going to look it up, and we're going to see. All right, tell me more. Tell me more. Let's write down umbrella and brolly. So we've got umbrella, and we've got brolly, which is obviously a cover, a portable cover for the rain. And I'm going to use the same thing. It's raining outside. I better take my brolly or my umbrella. And for these, what you can also tell me, is what word do you prefer? What word do you think sounds more fun or nicer to you? And maybe tell me why. So I think brolly here, even though I won't really use it, I think it is more of a fun sounding word. So of the two, I'm going to choose brolly because it's more fun. It sounds, it's raining, but we've got the brolly and it still sounds like it's going to be a fun day. All right. And Kubra says that they are craving chocolates. All right. After class, everyone gets chocolate because Kubra is craving chocolate. All right, let's move on to another one. And now we're going back to food. So before we have our chocolate, we're going to have bangers or sausages. So again, I think we can see that the USA is going to have sausages. Ooh, that's not a good sausage at all. That was really bad. I don't know. That looks more like a banana. Let me just find my thing here. That's not a good sausage. So let me draw that again. There we go. All right. And we'll just put another one there. All right. So we've got sausages, and the UK calls them bangers. I'm not sure why they call them bangers. It could be. We can just try to understand. When you cook sausages, sometimes the fat explodes, right? Sometimes they're in a pan, and the fat makes a bang sound when it's cooking. So maybe that's why they call them bangers. And there's even a very famous dish in the UK called bangers and mash, which is mashed potato with a bunch of sausages kind of inside, which, I mean, mashed potato and sausages always going to taste good. And again, I'm going to go here and say that I think bangers is more of a fun word than sausages because, again, it sounds like we're eating, but we're going to have fun while we're eating. Oh, okay. I see that we've got some more example sentences. So Gloria says, I love freshly baked Oreo cookies. Anything freshly baked is always so good. Kalipan says that he prefers the word umbrella, and it seems like we use many words from the USA. And I think that's very true. That's why we want to look at these words from the UK. And I think we use a lot of the words from the US because that is more of where media and entertainment comes from. So those words get put into our head more. Yun Ben has got a great sentence here. The sky is gray. I need to bring my brolly. Excellent. The Sammer says brolly may be easier to pronounce. That's true. All right. Let's write down. We've got bangers and sausages, which is, we all know what a sausage is. It's like a meat-filled casing. That makes it sound really boring. It's food. So I'm going to write down here two sentences. So my favorite food, this is not really my favorite food, is bangers and mash. Or we could say, I like sausages, and mashed potato, just to show the two different ways that we can say the same thing. And I think bangers and mash just sounds fun, just sounds much more fun. All right, so you can tell me again, which word do you think sounds better? Which one do you want to start using? And then we're going to go on to the next one, which is lift versus elevator. And again, I think, who said it here? Sammer said that Brawley is easier to pronounce. I think obviously here lift is easier to pronounce. But but the US calls it an elevator, and the UK calls it a lift. So what is it? It is that little box that we all get into that takes us up and down, right? It's an elevator. We all know what an elevator is. And why do they call it a lift? Why does the UK call it a lift? Because lift means to move from one place to another, whether you are lifting a box and putting it there, or maybe, as we're going to see in the next one, you are giving someone you're transporting them from one place to another. That's what lift is. So that's why they call this a lift. It is lifting you up or lifting you down. So that's what a lift. And why is it called an elevator? Right? Why does it call an elevator? Because inside here we have the word elevate, which is the fancy way to say lift. Elevate is the same thing, to take something up. And in a way, elevator should never go down, because elevator always should go up because you elevate something. But obviously, it does go down as well. All right, so that is lift in the UK, elevator in the US, because it's got the word elevate, and because lift means to move from one place to another. All right, and Kalipan says he uses sausages a lot. Do you mean you like to eat it, or you just use the word a lot? And Kalipan says, I call it an elevator nowadays. I think it's because of my tutors from the USA. It does happen. It gets into your head and you start using that word. And Yun Ben says, I always eat bangers with rice every day because it's my favorite food. I've never had bangers with rice or sausages with rice. That sounds interesting. All right, I'm going to try that. All right, let's write down lift and elevator. So lift and elevator. And so this is the device to move between floors in a building. All right. And so I would say I got into the lift on the, or I'm going to say I entered. I entered the lift on the first floor and exited on the third floor. And then I'm going to use the exact same sentence. Let me copy and paste here. And I'm going to put in elevator. So I entered the elevator on the first floor and exited on the third floor. Elevator. Now here again, I'm going to go with the way I usually say it is a lift. I call it a lift because, again, I think it's easier to say. And in my family, we just called it a lift. So that's, I always say, let's get into the lift. And like Samar says, elevator, you can use it all over the whole world, but lift might be just in the UK. And that's true. In some countries where the British had more of a presence, they also use the word lift there as well. So yes, usually we use the word elevator. It's because the United States, where all our media and entertainment come from. All right, let's move on to the next one, which is again lift and ride. So here, this is about taking someone. Let me draw it. So we've got the little car. This is a terrible little car, but we've got the one guy is giving the other guy a lift, and then he's going to drive off, and he's going to leave his friend there. So this is what we're talking about. Get in my car, I drive you here, you get out, and I go home. So I gave you a ride, or I gave you a lift. I transported you from one place to another place. And we can see again why it's called a lift in the UK, because it's about moving, same as the other one. So here you could even use this as a verb. Yes. So he lifted me from here to home. So here we can use it as a noun or as a verb. But with the ride, which is the US, we would use that as the noun. He gave me a ride. We wouldn't say he rode me home, because that doesn't sound right. So we would use that more as the noun. He gave me a ride, or can you give me a ride? Can you give me a lift? I need to get home. And I think both of these work well. I think here, ride makes a little more sense. Like we understand that better. Give me a ride, give me a lift. If you don't know what that means, you might think the person wants you to lift you up, which would make no sense. All right, we've got some examples here. All right, so Yunben says, whenever I go to work, I take the elevator to my office. Very good sentence. Kalipan says, in my country, I don't know what accent they use, but it kind of feels like all accents in the world. All right. Remind us, Kalipan, where are you from? Let's see here. You're from Sri Lanka. Okay, so I don't know what the accent is there, but sounds like it's fun to listen to people. Gloria says, elevator is commonly used and easy to recognize by people. This is true. And Kubra says, you should know which floor to go to with the elevator. Very good sentence. Yes. All right, let's write it down. So we've got lift and ride. So this is to transport someone. And Vanilla says that I think it's the same mix of accents in India. All right, I think everywhere, actually, because we're such a multicultural world these days, I think everywhere there's a mix of accents. And I like that. You know, it feels like you're speaking to so many different people. Okay, so this is to transport someone from one point to another point. Okay, and I'm going to use these in questions. So we're going to say, can you give me a lift or give me a ride home? And we got a good sentence from Kalipan, who says that in the elevator, she pressed the button for the lobby. Very good. Excellent sentence. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And this one, I've always kind of wondered why we use this. So in the UK, they use the word flat. In the US, in American English, they use the word apartment. So we know what it is. It's usually it's a place in a building. It's your home. It's got, you know, all your things there. That's your apartment. And then in the UK, we call it a flat. And I think the reason they call it a flat is because a house usually has a top, like a triangular shaped roof, and it's a big building. Whereas an apartment is flat. And I think that's where it comes from. I'm not sure. But either way, in the UK, they call it a flat. You would say, I'm going to go to my flat. Do you want to come to my flat? And in the US, they would say, you want to go to the apartment? Take a look. This is my apartment. That's what we're going to use. So there, I think, again, that the word apartment makes more sense. I think we can understand what that means. If I said to someone who doesn't know, you want to come back to my flat, they may be very confused as to what that means. All right, let's draw what it is. So we've got our little apartment building here. And that is going to be your apartment. That's going to be your flat. We got a good question here. So Kalipan says, is there any difference for the word escalator? So we have elevator and lift. There's no specific British word for escalator. It's just called the escalator. Some people might call it a lift because, you know, again, you're moving from one place to another. But more likely, it's going to be an escalator. That's just what it is. But it's a good question. And I think we were going to do vacation and holiday, but let's look at it now. So Summer says vacation and holiday is suited to this lesson, and it is. It's not on the board, but we were going to look at it, so we'll look at it afterwards. Thank you, Summer. All right, so let's write down flat and apartment. All right, so this is a place you live inside a building. All right, and we would say, I'm going to go to my flat. Or we could say, do you want to come back to my apartment? Oh, and we got a good, some good sentences here. Ian Ben says, can you give me a lift to the supermarket? Perfect. Excellent use of the word. And Caliban says, can you see high hills dappled in snow from your apartment or damp basement flat? Okay. Makes it sound like a flat is a bad place to live, but you could have a high flat and see also the high hills dappled in snow. That is a wonderful sentence. I love that that use of dapple. Very good, Calipan. All right, let's move to, we said we would do it here because Simon brought it up. Vacation or holiday. So let me see where I have space. Let me make some space over here quickly. Let's just put it over here. My board is being a little bit uncooperative today, so I'm having to use some water, but we'll get there. There we go. All right, so vacation versus holiday. And what I'll do here is I'll even write down that sometimes the UK people will even just talk about holes. So the US will say we're going on vacation. We may even say, if we wanted to, you could say vacay. These days, people like to abbreviate everything. So they would say, I'm going on my vacay. Some people use that. I don't like it myself. And then the UK people would say, I'm going on holidays or I'm going on holes. So again, you can decide which one sounds more fun to you. I think here that the UK one sounds more fun. Holidays sounds like happy time, and I don't know why. Vacation, it's good, but it doesn't sound as exciting to me. And obviously, what does it mean? I think we all know vacation or holidays is when you go, especially now, it's summertime, you go travel to a different place, you have fun, you relax, you do different stuff. That's a vacation or a holiday. And Desi is talking about so many other ones, which we're going to get to some of them as well. All right, so let me just write this one down. Vacation or a vacay, and holiday or holes. And obviously this is going away during a period like summer or Christmas. So I'm going to do this one as a question again. Where are you going on your holidays? Or we could say, I need some vacation time. Ooh, too many E's there. There we go. Ooh, we've got like a bunch here from Desi. Trainers and sneakers. Yes. Is that not on the board? It was going to be. Trainers and sneakers, fringe or bangs, which is like a hairstyle. Petrol station, gas station, aubergine. All right, there's a lot of food there. All right, so we'll take a look at the trainers and the sneakers in a second. Thank you for that, Desi. And we've got here from Vanilla. Says, can I give you a lift to your school? Very good. So a lot of people are using the word lift. All right, it's interesting. I think that shows that maybe that's more in people's heads. And then we got Ian Bin. I enjoy unwinding in my apartment when I return from work. Very nice. Nice use of the word unwinding. And Ian Ben says, I really enjoy going to the beach during the holidays. Yes. Just relaxing, watching the waves. It's great. All right, let's just finish off here. Lorry and truck, and then we're going to do trainers and sneakers as Desi gave us. So here, a lot of people may not know this one. So we often hear the word truck especially in movies or series. They talk about a truck or a flatbed truck or a big truck. But in the UK, they often call it a lorry. And we're talking about the same thing. It is a big vehicle carrying something heavy or big. It's a truck. We know what a truck is. It's 18-wheelers, big wheels, big engine, etc. But in the UK, they often call it a lorry. But we use it the same way. So you might say, put it in the lorry, or put it in the truck, unload the lorry, unload the truck. And here, I'm not sure, again, where this exactly comes from. This is, again, one of those cases where the languages just took different paths completely, and one word became one thing, and the other word became the other thing. So that is lorry versus truck. And Vanilla says lorry is used in India, like we said, because there was a big British presence in India, like, and still is probably to a certain degree. They use lorry. So yes, it's great that you guys are familiar with that. And we've got from Calipan the word tap. Did we not put that? That was going to also be. We're going to do those. Thank you for that, Calipan. All right, so let's write this down. We've got lorry versus truck. So this is a big vehicle to transport heavy items. So we can say, please unload the lorry. And it's the same thing, exactly the same thing. Please unload the truck. Unload, to take out. All right, so now we've got two that have been suggested. Let me, again, make some space on my board here. So let's do it over here. My board does not want to be clean today. All right, let me just dry that off quickly. I think we can work with that. We can work with that. Okay, so we have from, I think it was Samar, we have trainers versus sneakers. And then from Calipan, we had here tap versus faucet. All right, so obviously for trainers and sneakers, what we're talking about are shoes, sports shoes specifically. So this is not like a fancy shoe. This is a sports shoe. We can see why they would call them trainers in the UK, because it's a sports-related shoe, which you're going to use to train, right? You may be running, you may be exercising. So the original usage of them was to train. But obviously nowadays, I think it's more of a fashion item. A lot of people want very fancy trainers. And sometimes they're even called kicks. So that is a very little known use of it. Again, from more of the UK, they'll call it kicks. So trainers, fancy shoes. In America, they call them sneakers. Now, I'm not really sure why they call them sneakers. You don't really sneak around with them, and I don't see where the word comes from, but that's what they call them. And again, today it's more of a fashion shoe. It's not something that you train with. It's more of a fashion accessory. And then, before I write it down, we have tap versus faucet. So what is this? This is when you open water in your kitchen, in your bathroom. You open the tap or you open the faucet to get the water running. So in the UK, they call it a tap. In the US, they'll call it a faucet. I think faucet is more of like a technical word for it, because that's what it is. Why is it called a tap in the UK? Because this is like an old kind of word where you would tap. It's finding water and tapping into the water supply. So there, again, it's the same device, but now we're just using a simple word, tap. And often you hear people say, do you want tap water? This is, do you want water from the tap, from the faucet? And we will never say, do you want faucet water? It sounds very strange. So we'll still use the word tap when we're talking about the type of water that comes out of it. Again, you guys can tell me if you have ever used the word faucet, if it's popular, or if you just also use the word tap more. Okay, let's write all of these down before we move on to doing a few on the other side. So we've got trainers versus sneakers. And Kalipan says that he's never used the word faucet, always used the word tap. And Desi says, my neighbor is from England and uses faucet. That's really interesting. That is actually quite interesting. And we've got a good sentence here from Yun Bin. Trucks often deliver goods to stores. Yes. And we could also say lorries often deliver goods to stores. All right. So these are fancy shoes. And so we could say, I want the new trainers, the new red trainers. Let's give it a type. So I want the new red trainers or the new red sneakers today. Let's say someone is very excited about that. And then we have also the tap versus the faucet. So tap versus faucet. And this is where water comes out in a bathroom or kitchen. So we would say, I opened the tap to do this. Or we could say, I went to open the faucet. Okay. Kalipan has got another one, but it's not as well known, so I'm not going to do that one. Let's do the ones that are here. So the next one we have is jumper versus sweater. And another word for this is jersey. So this is an item of clothing that someone wears. That's a very big jersey, very big jumper or sweater. And it's just the long sleeve clothes that you wear in winter. So that's what a jumper is. That's what a sweater is. So in the UK, they call it a jumper or a jersey. I'm not sure why they call it a jumper. In the US, they call it a sweater. And I think we can understand why they call it a sweater. Because if you do wear it and then you get hot, you're going to sweat. It makes you sweat. It's a sweater. So that's kind of where it may come from. But nevertheless, we've got jumper versus sweater. Those are the two. Let's do two at a time here. Let's do another one that is, let's do the next one, which is chips versus French fries. So here, if you go to McDonald's, and there's our little French fries from McDonald's, you're going to get French fries, you know, little potatoes that are sliced thin and fried. And to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of French fries. I prefer mine to be a bit thicker. I like potato cut thicker, not so thin, but doesn't matter. So in the US, they'll call them French fries. In the UK, they're going to call them chips. All right, and you'll see why this can become a bit confusing. And from what I understand, why are they called French fries anyway? It's because a long time ago, and actually they were originally cooked this way in Belgium. So I think it was Thomas Jefferson who learned about it or visited Belgium and saw how they were cooking the potatoes in these very thin strips, and he liked them. They tasted good to him. So he brought the idea back to the United States, and he started calling it potatoes cooked in the French style, even though it was from Belgium. And I think some people from Belgium still get upset by this because it's not French. It's from Belgium, and they're two completely different countries. So that is French fries versus chips. But in the United States, we have chips, and this is something like Doritos or nachos or potato chips when the potato is sliced in a different way, in kind of that round shape. So it's not a French fry, it's a chip. And they're going to call that chips in the US. In the UK, they're going to call it crisps. Why will they call it crisps? Because when you eat it, it's crisp. It breaks with a nice, chunky, crisp sound. So that can cause a bit of confusion there because it's the same word, chips, but it's used in two completely different ways. So chips and French fries, crisps and chips. All right, before I write these down, I see we've got a lot of different sentences here. All right, so for Kubra, he says, sneakers are very comfortable for me. Yes, I like sneakers as well. And Yuen Ben says, sometimes I need to buy new trainers. Good. Sammer says, he made a fuss after he had forgotten the tap on or left the tap on. Yes, very good sentence. Kalipan, I wore my favorite sweater to keep warm on the chilly evening. Nice use of the word chilly. Kubra says, I like low-fat French fries. I did not know that there was something low-fat French fries, but if you have found them, Kubra, well done. Yubin, I leave the tap running while I'm taking a shower. Good sentence. And Vanilla says, potato chips were made to get revenge on a customer. I have heard this story as well. It's a long story, so I'm not going to go into it now. But what you guys can do is look up the story that Vanilla is talking about. So these chips, the crisps, when they thinly slice them, the story that I remember is that a customer at a restaurant was complaining that the French fries were not cooked correctly or something, and he kept sending the potato back to the chef, and then the chef decided, okay, I'm going to cut these things so thin and then fry them, and this guy's going to break his teeth when he chews on them because they'll be so hard. But instead, they were crispy, and the guy liked them, and then they caught on. So you can go look up the whole one. Kalipan says, I ordered a burger with a side of French fries at the dinner. And Yuban says, during cold winters, I often wear a sweater to keep warm. Yes. All right, let's write all of these down. So we got jumper versus sweater, which is a jersey, a long sleeve shirt to keep warm. All right, and then let's write down chips versus French fries. So these are thin rectangles of potato cooked in oil. It's a very precise way to describe them, even though it's French fries. And then we have crisps versus chips, which is thin, round slices of potato fried again in oil. There we go. And Irvin says, I love fish and chips because it's very good to eat. All right. And there, yes, fish and chips, we can see how the UK are using the word chips to describe what other people might call French fries. Excellent. Thank you for that, Irvin. All right, then a few more here. Let's do boot and trunk. So here we're talking about on a car. Again, my cars are not so good today. A boot, and we put the window here, so this is the guy. The boot is the back where you open it up and you put stuff in it. So trunk is used in the US. Boot is used in the UK. Now, I think we can understand where the word trunk comes from for the US, because a trunk can also be a piece of luggage that you pick up and take somewhere. That is a trunk. So in the old days, when cars were being created and developed, sometimes they would just take this big piece of luggage, put it on the car. You'd have a trunk attached to the car, so you could take things when you were driving. Boot is different. I think boot is used because it is the back of, and a boot is at the bottom of your foot. I think that's the only way that I can understand it. But again, it's talking about the same place at the back where you put things, a boot versus a trunk. And then one that we hear a lot in British series and British movies the loo versus a bathroom. So here we're obviously talking about, and I'm going to try and draw it here, but I'm not sure if it's going to work properly. It's not bad. Okay, so we're talking about a bathroom or a toilet. And in the UK, they're going to call it a loo. And in the US, they'll call it a bathroom. So I think we can understand where they get those from, because in the US, it would be a place where there would be maybe a bath, there'll be water, there'd be a place to clean yourself. It's a bathroom. Loo, I think, actually comes from the long word lavatory, which is another word for a bathroom. And I think they eventually, they can sometimes use the word lav as well in the UK for that. But I think they shortened that really to loo because lavatory was just so long to say. And what they sometimes call it, just as an extra one here, is a WC. So that is in the UK and some parts of Europe. A WC, which means water closet, because it would be the place like a room, closet, small room, where there would be water, various things to do with water, whether it's a toilet or a tap and faucet. So those are the three ways. We've got the loo, the bathroom, and the WC. And bathroom is I think the easiest one to understand where it comes from, and then the others we have to think a little bit about. All right, and let's write them down. And we've got from Desi. Desi says loo and toilet in Britain, and washroom in Canadian. And yes, Brits say lab from laboratory. That's right. So another one there we've got from Canadian English, which is washroom. So lots of different words. Sometimes people even talk about the restroom, because why would they talk about that? Because they don't want to mention anything to do with the toilet or to do with anything unclean. So they'll say, I want to go to the restroom. It's a nice way to say it. All right, so let's write all of these down. We did boot versus trunk. So boot and trunk is the back of the car where items are placed to move easily. And then we also had loo. I'm going to put all of these. Bathroom, lavatory, lav, WC, and let's even put washroom down, which is toilet and faucet and bath and basin. All of these are the same word, the same thing. All right, and we've got two more to go. So let's do them. I think these ones are pretty easy. We've got a torch versus a flashlight. So we're talking about it's dark, and we've got I think I had one here, but I don't have it in my hand. So it's the torch where the light is going to come out. So in America, we're going to call it a flashlight. And we can understand why, because it's light. I don't know why they say flash, but it's light that we're using. In the UK, we're going to call it a torch. Why? Because a torch, actually, the old word for torch would have been this. I'm going to draw it over here. It would have been something that you'd held with fire coming out of it. So that would be a torch. You'd use it for the same thing. You'd use it to walk through the dark to see where you were going. So now when it's become more of a electrical thing, they still call it a torch. So torch versus flashlight. And then our final one, which I think is really the easiest one, is the pavement versus the sidewalk. So here we're on a road. So that's our road. And then we've got the sidewalk or the pavement where the people are walking. So in the US, they use the word sidewalk. All right, very easy to understand where they get that from. It's on the side of the road, and it's where they walk. So that's an easy one. Pavement, maybe you'd be thinking, why would they call it a pavement in the UK? It's because it is paved. So it's made of big pieces of tile, big concrete tiles. You pave it, and people walk on it, this is different from the road. The road has tar on it. It is tarmac. So it's the way to say, okay, the road has tarmac. The pavement has big paving stones. That's why we call it a pavement. And obviously you walk on it. That's why we can call it a sidewalk as well. All right, we got a good sentence here from Kalipan. We packed our luggage in the trunk of the car for the road trip. Yun Benz says, can you provide us with some examples of a boot or a trunk? Okay, so I'll give an example sentence for boot or trunk. We've got here from Zandila. I put my groceries in the boot of my car, or I could say I put my shopping in the trunk. And let's put these others down here. We've got torch versus flashlight. So this is, again, a portable handheld device to see in the dark, to provide light in the dark. All right, and a torch, just so we know, in Old English would have been a handheld stick with fire, and that's why we call it a torch. And then we've got pavement versus sidewalk. So this is a place on the side of the road or next to the road where people walk. All right. So I think we covered quite a lot of really interesting differences today, and we looked a little bit at where they may come from. And I thank you guys for all the very interesting explanations and sentences. Remember, if you came in the middle of this class and you missed it, go to the playlist. You'll see all of our classes, including this one. You can watch everything that you missed, watch it again in case you need to think about it a bit more. To those of you that have never been to Cambly before, remember, it is a great web-based and mobile-based platform where you can learn anything. If you need to work on conversation, if you need to work on a test like IELTS or TOEFL, if you want to work on business English, you're going to find tutors that specialize in those things. So go to Cambly as soon as you can, sign up for a subscription, get started. And yes, so I'm going to say again, thank you for joining me. Oh, I see a few more coming in. I'm going to read these last few and then say goodbye. So I see from Yubin, I go for a walk on the pavement every week. And Kalipan says, I just wanted to express my gratitude for today's live session. It was a pleasure to read all of your stuff, Kalipan, and everybody else's. Thank you so much for participating in today's class. We really appreciate that interactivity. So thank you guys. You make this a great class. And you are welcome, Amimal. And we've got from Desi, who's the grocery store is the supermarket, trousers or pants, fall is autumn. You're very good with your stuff, Desi. All right, and Kurs says, some people call a vacuum cleaner a Hoover. Well, that's a story for another time. All right, thank you guys for joining us today. Join us again. There's going to be another Cambly live session next week, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye for now.